Okay, so in today's session, we'll cover the first chapter of the Lilamrita in its entirety. Although this is not the plan to do only one chapter in a session, but in today's, while preparing for today's session, I realized that unless we break it at the first chapter, it's going to get too long, because next chapter I need to provide you with some references and context to understand it properly. But the chapter on childhood is pretty long, but at the same time, it can be covered in one session. Okay, so as we begin to relish, study Srila Prabhupada's life, beginning with his childhood, maybe always remember that this is someone, Srila Prabhupada is someone not at all like us. He's come down spiritually, he's come down from the spiritual world. And so the activities are human-like. Of course, he's a jiva. The activities are human-like in the sense that they may appear similar to the activities of a conditioned living being. So we should be careful to think that, to understand that these pastimes are very different from the pastimes of ordinary, mundane, conditioned souls. Although they may look very similar, but they are extremely different. And especially in Prabhupada's childhood, we can see that the pastimes that are narrated here are always linked, tied together with Krishna consciousness, because Prabhupada is born to a pure devotee Gaur Mohan De, Prabhupada himself referred to him as pure devotee. Pure devotee is the most rare person in this entire universe. Out of all the great people, out of all the hundreds and thousands and millions of accomplished people, it is very rare to find a pure devotee. And Prabhupada's father was such a rare person. And so Prabhupada's appearing in a family of a pure devotee is not an ordinary event. And so let's just get into that. Give me a second. Okay, I'll just try to start the PowerPoint on this. Just give me a second. Did you get it? Your company also. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will share screen first.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. Did you send a new one?
Yeah. So what I'll do is that we'll go through, I've prepared a PowerPoint, and I've also got a PDF document. So in some places, we'll refer to the PDF document while generally using the PowerPoint. Share screen.
Share screen.
Yeah. And go to the PowerPoint. Sorry. Move this away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Done? Screen sharing is done?
Yeah.
Okay,
Screen share.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada appeared in this world on the 1st of September 1896 in the Tollygunge locality of Calcutta. Those of you who have not been there yet, Tollygunge is quite close to our ISKCON 3C Albert Road temple. And in traditional India, when a lady gives birth to a child, she normally goes to her mother's house. So Srila Prabhupada's mother had gone to her mother's house, which is in Tollygunge, which is actually towards the southern part of Calcutta. You could say central southern part of Calcutta. Not exactly central, but towards southern part of Calcutta. And Prabhupada's father and the father's family was from the northern part of Calcutta. So Prabhupada was born in Tollygunge on the 1st of September 1896. The 31st of August was Sri Krishna Janmashtami, and he was born on September 1st, the day after Janmashtami. Now, there is something about Prabhupada's birth, which Prabhupada himself speaks about. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu wanted that his message should be broadcast all over the world, in every village and every town. And my Guru Maharaj attempted. Bhaktivinoda Thakur distributed his literature. I think in 1896, he sent his first book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and I saw in McGill University that book. And I do not know, that was the year of my birth also, 1896. So Prabhupada's appearance year coincided with the year in which Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sent his first book to the west, to McGill University in Canada. This is from a conversation on the 15th of October 1972 in Vrindavan. Then there's another conversation. He sent his first book in 1896. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the first origin of this movement, but he simply thought of it, and he was expecting some others that willing to take up the work. Well, somebody says that I am the same man, and I was born in 1896. So he wanted to combine the whole civilized nations under this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's cult, Hare Krishna movement. I think I've given this hint in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. This is a conversation with the Canadian ambassador to Iran, 13th of March, 1975 in Iran. Okay. There were two names that were given to Prabhupada at the time of his birth. One name was given by his maternal uncle, because Prabhupada's mother was in her mother's house at the time of Prabhupada's birth. Prabhupada was given one name by his maternal uncle. That name was Nandulal. He gave that name because Srila Prabhupada was born on the day that Maharaj Nanda observed the appearance of Lord Krishna's appearance. So Krishna appeared on Janmashtami, and the day after that, Nanda Maharaj held a big ceremony to observe that appearance of Krishna. So based on that, his maternal uncle, Prabhupada's maternal uncle, named him Nandulal. Whereas Prabhupada's parents named him as Abhay Charan. Generally, the meaning of Abhay Charan is one who is fearless, having taken shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. That is a legitimate meaning. But at the same time, there's another meaning. Prabhupada himself speaks about it, about his birth. I somehow missed putting that reference here, where Prabhupada says that there is no afraid of death of this child. There's no fear of death of this child. That's what it means, Abhay Charan. Also, that's an additional meaning to that name. Now, after some time, Prabhupada moved in Tollygunge. You may be aware that this year, on the 125th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's birth, we have secured that place. I remember visiting there in 2015, and it was a very small place, and there were small houses there, and there was a jackfruit tree under which Prabhupada was born, under a jackfruit tree. So today, the entire property belongs to the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and we're going to build a big memorial there for Srila Prabhupada. So after some time, they moved to Prabhupada's father's home. This is in 151 Addison Road, also referred to as the Mahatma Gandhi Road now. Now, this one, as I explained earlier, Tollygunge is in the southern part of Calcutta. The northern part of Calcutta, this is his father's home. It's also referred to as the Bara Bazaar area. And these places, the southern part and the northern parts, were inhabited by the Indian citizens. Whereas the central areas, like where our current temple is, Albert Road, Dalhousie, Chowringhee, these were the central areas were occupied by the British, whereas the northern and southern parts were occupied by Indian citizens. So Prabhupada's grandmother, maternal grandparents were from southern part of Calcutta, and paternal grandparents were from the northern part of Calcutta. Now, I don't know how many of you have gone to Harrison Road or Mahatma Gandhi Road. It's pretty wide. It's pretty wide for Calcutta. It's pretty wide. And you can see properties lining on either side of the street. I have particularly inserted the name Lokanath Malik in this because the properties on both sides of the road were owned by Lokanath Malik. Now, who is this Lokanath Malik? Now, Prabhupada actually, his surname is Abhay Charan Dey. So they are a family of gold merchants, gold and salt. They were dealing with the British for many years in gold and salt. So Suvarna Manik. Manik means merchant. Suvarna means gold. So Prabhupada belonged to a family of gold merchants. And the surname Dey is coming from there. It is explained that during the time of the Mughal invasion, one branch of the Deys was especially very influential and wealthy. So the Muslim ruler, one member of that was very influential. So the Mughals named them Malik. Malik means, it basically means Lord. Okay. So this Lokanath came in that family of Maliks. Now, what is the connection between Maliks and Dey? The Maliks are supposed to be a branch of the Deys. That's all. So it is just a particular branch of the Deys, which was given. Dey means DE, which was given the name Malik by the Mughal rulers. Now, one important feature of these families is that they were very pious families, very pious families. So in Mahatma Gandhi Road, even until this day, the Radha Govinda temple. Now, on either side of the Harrison Road were lined with properties which belonged to the Lokanath Malik, but there is also a Radha Govinda deity, a Radha Govinda temple. Now, the money that was coming from the shops on that, because it's a commercial area, plus commercial cum residential area. So the shop owners would pay to maintain the deities and also the pujari. So that was the culture, that they would consider the Supreme Lord as their actual master, and all these shop owners would contribute to maintain the deities. So Prabhupada was born into such a pious setting where everything was centered around the Radha Govinda deities. I'll just, there's a PDF here. So there's a small brief mention of it. I'll elaborate more on it. So when Prabhupada was small, he used to have, when he was a baby, in fact, he had a friend called Siddheshwar Malik. Srila Prabhupada, I used to ride on the same perambulator with Siddheshwar Malik. He used to call me Moti, Pearl, and his nickname was Subidhi. And the servant pushed us together. If one day this friend would not see me, he would become mad. He would not go in the perambulator without me. We would not separate even for a moment. I can remember standing at the doorway of Radha Govinda temple, saying prayers to Radha Govinda Murti. I would watch for hours together. The deity was so beautiful with his slanted eyes. They're about 18 inches, the deity, golden form. Radha Govinda are about 18 inches, golden form, and they have a silver canopy on top of them. How it used to, just like we have in ISKCON, our ISKCON temple, they follow the same process. They all, they followed and still follow the same process. They offer bhoga, they have rice and kachoris and the sabjis. Kachoris were offered to Radha Govinda deities regularly. And then what would happen was that before breakfast, everybody would go. All the families on those streets, they would go to the Radha Govinda deities and they would take darshan. Only after coming back, they would honor prasadam. Of course, the Radha Govinda the Mahaprasadam would be distributed to all the guests who come to the temple. So this is the atmosphere in which Prabhupada was raised, going to Radha Govinda deities daily. In fact, it is interesting that those of you who have gone to Jaipur may see the same phenomenon. Of course, in our ISKCON temples, Mangalarti is quite common. But in a temple like Radha Govinda in Jaipur, Radha Govinda's deity is there, Rupa Goswami's deity, Radha Govinda is there. So there, a lot of businessmen, I mean, Mangalarti, I found that very amusing because so many businessmen, they come in their cars, their bikes, and it's just crowded. And these are all businessmen and local people who come every day to Radha Govinda deities because they acknowledge that the Lord is the master. And so this culture we can still see in the Radha Govinda temple in Jaipur. But this is the culture that is prevalent for many centuries in India, that the pious families, they would consider the deities to be their masters, and they would actually go and I mean, when we say darshan actually means we're going to report ourselves to the Lord. We're going to see the Lord to report ourselves. That's what it means. Not that we're going to see the Lord just for the sake of seeing. No, you're going to see the Lord to report ourselves. I'm your servant. I've come to see you. Please give me your service. So this is the meaning of going to greet the deities. Okay. So as Prabhupada is growing up, you may have heard about this famous incident called the Typhoid Incident, where when Prabhupada was about a year and a half, he was afflicted with typhoid. And at that time, there was Dr. Bose, an allopathic physician, who said that this can be cured only if Srila Prabhupada has chicken broth. And Gaur Mohan Dev, Prabhupada's father, protested that, no, I cannot feed my son chicken because we don't cook meat. So Dr. Bose said that I'll prepare it and bring it from my house. So Dr. Bose prepared chicken broth and he brought it. And the moment Gaur Mohan tried to feed small Abhay Charan with that chicken broth, Abhay Charan began to vomit. So that was abandoned. That plan to feed him typhoid, to feed him chicken broth to cure typhoid was abandoned. Now, there's one thing in the Lilamrita which I noticed is that there is a little bit of an error here, because in the sequence that in the chronology that has been mentioned in the Lilamrita, the plague should come actually next. It is not that, I mean, so I put it in the same order as the Lilamrita, but since I'm talking to you all, I just want to bring to your attention. The plague does not happen in 1900s, as is mentioned in the Lilamrita. That's an error. It happened in 1898. That's about, Prabhupada says I was about 1.5 to 2 years old. So, there's something interesting about this plague incident. He mentions this, Prabhupada relates this incident. I have heard in 1898, I was born in 1896. So I've heard, I've seen also, I remember in Calcutta, there was a very violent type of plague epidemic in 1898. So Calcutta became devastated. All people practically left Calcutta. Daily, hundreds and hundreds of people were dying. I was 1 year old or 1.5 year old. I have seen what was happening, but there was plague epidemic that I did not know. Later on, I heard from my parents. So one Babaji, he organized Sankirtan, Hare Krishna Sankirtan. When there was no other way, so he organized Sankirtan all over Calcutta. And in the Sankirtana, all people, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Parsi, everyone joined. And they were coming, they were going road to road, street to street, entering in every house. So that Mahatma Gandhi Road, 151, you have seen. The Sankirtan party we received very nicely. There was light and I was very small. I was also dancing. I can remember, just like our small children sometimes dances. I remember I could see only up to the knees of the persons who had joined. So the plague subsided. This is a fact. Everyone who knows history of Calcutta, the plague was subsided by Sankirtana movement. Okay. Then Prabhupada goes on to say, of course, we do not recommend that Sankirtana should be used for some material purpose. That is Namapara. Shamamati Pramana. Sankirtana. You can utilize Sankirtana for some material purpose, but that is not allowed. That is Namapara. Because Nama, the holy name of Krishna and Krishna, they are identical. You cannot utilize Krishna for your personal material benefit. That is Apara. Krishna is the Lord. You cannot engage the Lord for your service. Similarly, you cannot utilize the holy name of the Lord for some material purpose. That is not allowed. So anyway, because Ye Yata Mam Prapadyante, Bhagavad Gita 4:11, if you wanted some material benefit by chanting Hare Krishna mantra, you will get it. But that is Namapara. You won't get the ecstasy of loving God. That is the aim of chanting Hare Krishna mantra. How you shall elevate yourself to the platform of loving God. That is required. Savai Pumsham Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti Radokshaje 1 Srimad Bhagavatam 1-6. Not for utilizing the holy name for some material purpose. But this happened with God experience. I have heard, I have seen. Srimad Bhagavatam 1:10-5. This is a class on Srimad Bhagavatam 1:10-5 in Mayapur, 20th of June, 1973. Now, it's interesting that Prabhupada actually says that the Sankirtan movement subsided the plague. The plague subsided because of the Sankirtan movement. Elsewhere, we also see that once Prabhupada, when he was in Hyderabad, there was a drought there in Hyderabad. And Prabhupada had tried to convince the officers of the city that if you organize Harinam Sankirtan, all your problems will be solved. And Prabhupada took his devotees on Harinam Sankirtan, and he, by virtue of that Harinam Sankirtan, it rained. And Prabhupada told them, look, I told you that if you do Harinam Sankirtan, rains will come. So Prabhupada did not do it to make the rains come. Prabhupada was trying to establish the point that if you try to serve Krishna genuinely, automatically, all material problems can be solved. We don't have to try something separately. So our business is to chant the holy name of the Lord and to induce everyone to chant the holy name of the Lord, whether there is a plague or there is no plague, whether there is corona or no corona. We're supposed to induce everyone to chant the holy name of the Lord, and we should be sure that by chanting of the holy names, what to speak of corona, corona's grandfather, corona's great-grandfather, everybody can be eradicated. That is called faith in the chanting of the holy names. We are not doing it for that sake, but we should have the faith that the Sankirtan movement, by chanting of the holy names, material problems will automatically get solved. We don't do it to solve a material problem. We do it because we want to please the Lord. But we should also know very clearly that by chanting the holy name of the Lord, even all material problems can be solved. So what about the fact that some people but we should introduce people to this information that chanting the holy name of the Lord will bring you all perfection. So we should induce people to chant the holy name of the Lord, even if they do it for some material purpose. Still, it is better than not chanting. It's better than not chanting. So we have to utilize every possible opportunity to induce people to chant the holy names. We should not tell people, okay, you want the plague to go away, chant the holy name. That is not the point that Prabhupada made also. Prabhupada said, you practice Krishna consciousness. What to speak of your drought problem? Every other problem also will go away. Why are you bothered about it? Drought is one problem, there will be some other problems. Life is going to be a string of problems. So we are not interested in solving each problem separately. We are interested in pleasing the Lord. And when we please the Lord, automatically all the problems of material life will be handled by Krishna. Okay, so okay, and Prabhupada also mentions that Prabhupada was very fond of plants, and this is something very particular about Srila Prabhupada. Even when he was building the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, he wanted that the tamal tree be retained. He just didn't want trees to be cut. In Juhu, when we had to give road to the government to make a road, Prabhupada insisted, do not cut the tree. Then they can have two roads with the tree in the middle, So Prabhupada is very, very insistent about protecting plants. And this particular thing which I brought up here is even when he was a small boy, when he would go to his maternal grandparents' house, he would go there and he said Prabhupada narrates that he would just like to sit among the plants. He would just like to sit among the plants. Of course, he along with his cousins would take a sprinkler and water the plants, but he was especially fond of sitting amidst plants. And Prabhupada Raya speaks about cutting trees and plants in the Bhagavatam. Now, this is a very important section. Prabhupada on his father. Now, this is a very important section for us to read and understand because how does a pure devotee raise his children? That's very important for us to know, because we are members of the Krishna consciousness movement and we have to raise children to be Krishna conscious. And Prabhupada's father, Gaur Mohan De, has set a sterling example in that regard, and Prabhupada narrates about it. So let's see some of the elements of that, how Prabhupada was raised. This is a little, okay. My father's income was no more than 250 rupees, but there is no question of need. In the mango season, when we were children, we would run through the house playing and we would grab mangoes as we were running through. It is explained that, Prabhupada explains elsewhere, that is to keep the mangoes in a cane basket. And all through the day, we would eat mangoes. We wouldn't have to think, can I have a mango? My father always provided food. Mangoes were 1 rupee a dozen. Life was simple, but there is always plenty. We were middle class, but receiving 4 or 5 guests daily. My father gave 4 daughters in marriage. There was no difficulty for him. Now, this is very important to know. We were middle class, but receiving 4 or 5 guests daily. Now, this is the culture that Prabhupada also established in the Krishna consciousness movement. I think it was 1972, where he wrote a letter to all the temple presidents. He said, ensure at any given point in time, when someone walks into a temple, there should be prasadam at least for 12 people. From what I remember is 12. Anyway, I can try to pull out that reference in the future class. So there he even says what should be there, puri and all the sabjis and things like that. So Prabhupada father taught this culture of hospitality. And this is what grihasthas are meant to do. They are meant to receive guests. I mean, if not daily is the best standard, but if not daily, at least very periodically, they're supposed to receive guests and serve them prasadam. My father gave 4 daughters in marriage, and there was no difficulty for him. Maybe it was not a very luxurious life. There was no scarcity of food or shelter or cloth. Daily, he purchased 2.5 kilograms of milk. He did not like to purchase retail, but would purchase a year's supply of coal by the cartload. We were happy, not that because we did not purchase a motor car, we were unhappy. My father used to say, God has 10 hands. If he wants to take away from you with 2 hands, how much can you protect? And when he wants to give you with 10 hands, then with your 2 hands, how much can you take? So this is, if you notice, Prabhupada is speaking about how exactly his father trained him. Elsewhere, there's also a place, it's not there in the Lilamrita, where he speaks about his father saying that if they touch an object on the floor with their feet, he would tell them to take it and place it on their forehead, because everything belongs to Krishna. Touch it to their forehead. In India, it's quite common. You touch something with your foot or feet. I mean, then you take that object and touch it to your forehead. It means you're recognizing that this object actually belongs to Krishna. I should not have touched it with my feet. So you can see the kind of training that Gaur Mohan gave his son. Like he's teaching him the basic philosophy very nicely. That if Krishna wants to take away, nobody can do anything. If Krishna wants to give you, how much can you receive? My father would rise a little late, around 7 or 8. Now you may wonder, what is this rising around 7 or 8? And Prabhupada insisted on Mangalarati. But we should understand that a pure devotee is beyond all rules and regulations of Vaidhi Bhakti. Prabhupada refers to his father as pure devotee, which means he was established on the highest platform. So for him, there is no regulation. For him, all times of the day are equal. For us, the first 8 hours of the day are when mode of goodness is predominant. Next 8 hours is when mode of passion is predominant. And then the next 8 is when tamogana, mode of ignorance, is predominant. So these modes affect us. So we have to act accordingly. But however, for a pure devotee, nothing affects. For him, day, night, it's all the same. But anyway, first of all, his father would sleep at 12 o'clock at night. So that's why he would rise at 7 or 8. Then Prabhupada's writing. Then after taking bath, he would go purchasing. Then from 10 o'clock to 1 in the afternoon, notice that. From 10 to 1 in the afternoon, that's morning 10 to afternoon 1 o'clock, he was engaged in puja. Then he would take his lunch and go to business. And in the business shop, he would take a little rest for 1 hour. He would come home from business at 10 o'clock at night. And then again, he would do puja. Actually, his real business was puja. For livelihood, he did some business, but puja was his main business. We would be sleeping and father would be doing arati. Ding, ding, ding. We would hear the bell and wake up and see him bowing down before Krishna. So you can see the impression that it is created on Prabhupada, that his father's real business was puja. Okay. Now, Gaur Mohan Day was cool and lenient by nature, whereas his mother Rajni was fiery and she was a disciplinarian, whereas his father was cool and lenient. Cool in the sense cool. One thing is that his father, when Prabhupada is born in 1896, and Gaur Mohan Day was born in 1849, which means that Gaur Mohan Day was 47 when Srila Prabhupada was born. And his mother, Rajni, Prabhupada's mother's name is Rajni, and she was 30 years old at that time, which means that age difference between Srila Prabhupada's father and his mother was 17 years. Now, that may be very baffling in our current times that we live in, where even, few years considers, women are not willing to get married if the man is few years elder. So what about this, where it is 17 years? This is pretty not very uncommon in the Vedic culture. They would just see by qualification. Qualification was the criteria. Age, they could adjust. But qualification was the real criteria. And Gaur Mohan Day was a pure devotee and a very responsible gentleman. Now, I've mentioned this Kachori incident because Srila Prabhupada is very fond of kachoris. And he was even nicknamed as Kachori Mukha, one who likes to eat kachoris. So Prabhupada would regularly ask his mother to cook kachoris. So on one such occasion, it was in the night after Prabhupada, after Abhaycharan, Prabhupada came back from his play, and it was in the evening, and it was time for him to go to bed. And Mother Rajni refused to make him kachori, And when Gaur Mohan De, when he arrived back from his business, he heard of this incident. And he said, no, you should have actually made kachori for him. And then out of his kindness, he woke up Abhay Charan. He actually personally cooked kachori and fed Abhay Charan with the kachori. So he was so loving that he wanted that his son gets whatever he wants, of course, whatever he wants in the positive sense. We'll see also that later on. I'll come to that a little later. Okay. So I've juxtaposed this Kachori incident and the gun incident simultaneously, because Kachori incident, where it was very, he went out of his way, he woke him up and personally cooked Kachori and offered to Prabhupada. And the other incident is the gun incident. This is also a famous incident that Prabhupada was once, when they were going in the market, Prabhupada wanted a toy gun. Prabhupada says a red color gun, and Gaur Mohan refused to buy a gun for his son. But then Prabhupada began to cry, that finally Gaur Mohan relented, and then he bought a gun for Abhay Charan. And then after he got one gun, then he said, I wanted one more gun. He said, I want one more gun. And not only he said he wanted one more gun, he began to really ask for it. And when he was denied, he really began to ask for it. Then he began to, he lied down on the ground, began to stomp his feet on the ground. And so finally, after that, this thing, Gaur Mohan purchased 2 guns for him. So Prabhupada narrates that incident, that why he wanted 2 guns, because one for each hand. So it's not that Gaur Mohan did not try to discipline him at all, but sometimes he would do. But eventually, that incident he relented. Now, one contrast between Gaur Mohan De and his wife Rajni was, Gaur Mohan De had pure Krishna conscious goals for his son. He engaged a professional Mridanga teacher to teach Srila Prabhupada Mridanga. He wanted him to learn Bhagavatam, become a preacher, learn Kirtan and become a preacher. Whereas his mother, because there was a member of the Malik family, felt that Prabhupada should go to London to become a barrister or a lawyer. And his mother Rajni liked the idea. But Gaur Mohan prevailed upon his wife. Gaur Mohan De prevailed upon his wife because he gave 2 reasons: that he didn't want his son to go to the West and become a victim of alcohol and women. So he wanted his son to become a devotee of the Lord. As Prabhupada is saying, the father's real business was puja. So he wanted his son also to lead a life which is centered around Krishna. Okay, Srila Prabhupada on his mother. Now, before I go to that PDF, a few things. His mother was a very, very loving lady. And she was also born in the family of Vaishnavas. So she's also from a very pious background. And she did various things for the protection of Abhay Charan. One was that when she would dress him and Abhay Charan would be ready to go to play, she would put a drop of saliva on her finger and put it on Abhay's forehead as a protective armor. Now, I don't know this tradition, although I'm from India. I've not heard of that tradition. It may be unique to Bengal, maybe. I'm not sure about that. Eating with left hand. Eating with left hand, his mother took a vow that she will eat with left hand until Abhay Charan actually asks her, why are you eating with left hand? Because she had this idea that, I mean, if I do this, then Abhay Charan would have to at least live until he asks this question. These were her various methods of trying to ensure that Abhay Charan had a long life. Prabhupada speaks about his mother. Prabhupada, Mother Yashoda would chant mantras in the morning to protect Krishna from all dangers throughout the day. When Krishna killed some demon, she thought it was due to her chanting. My mother would do a similar thing with me. I was very naughty when I was a boy. I would break anything. When I was angry, I would break the glass hookah pipes which my father kept to offer to guests. Once my mother was trying to bathe me and I refused and knocked my head on the ground and blood came. They came running and said, "What are you doing? You shall kill the child." Okay, and there are some other ways in which she tried to protect Prabhupada. She made him wear an iron bangle on his legs. So when kids, when they go out to play, they often get teased by the other kids. So other kids began to tease him that what is this iron bangle on your leg? So then Prabhupada goes back to his mother and says that please remove this. My friends are teasing me. She says, no, I will do that later. But Prabhupada demands, no, removed now and removed. There's once he swallows watermelon seed and his friends tell him that there's going to be watermelon plant which will grow in your stomach. And this is quite common among kids. Even when I was growing up, I remember that we had these kind of things. The watermelon will grow, we eat a seed. So Prabhupada's mother consoles him by saying, don't worry, I'm chanting mantras and nothing will happen. Horlicks. Prabhupada's mother used to feed him Horlicks, So as a food supplement when he was young. I used to be very fond of Horlicks when I was young. I think a lot of us have, like Horlicks. In fact, I used to eat it raw without milk. Dysentery. Now, this is a very interesting cure that Prabhupada also prescribed when later on when he established the Krishna consciousness. Dysentery is considered, you generally say take very light food when you have dysentery. But Prabhupada's mother, she gave him hot puris, fried eggplant and salt. Prabhupada also prescribed this. I think it was Tamal Krishna. I don't know. I'll look up that reference where he actually prescribed this, and it works. My wife has tried this, and with kids and others, and it's worked. It really disappears. If you have dysentery, you can try that. Hot puris with fried eggplant. Puris themselves are fried. And you fried eggplant and with salt in it. Now, administering medicines is an interesting episode in Prabhupada's life where his mother would try to feed him medicines. Like in India also, they have this thing that when they're babies, of course, he's not a baby at this time. When they're babies, they don't refuse to drink medicine. They hold their nose and blow on the face. The child closes its eyes, doesn't know what's happening. Before the child knows what is happening, the mother just puts a spoon of medicine into the child's mouth. Now, nothing was working with, Prabhupada, Abhay Charan had grown up a little bit at that point. So it would take actually three men to hold Abhay Charan down so that his mother can forcibly administer medicines. Prabhupada just did not like taking medicines. Then there's this funny incident about Privi when he would want to go to want to pass water. He would hold his mother's sari and say, I need to pass water. She'd say, why? Go ahead and do it. Why do you need my permission? Okay. This baby tooth. So when Prabhupada lost his tooth first time, when he was a baby, what the mother did was she took that tooth and placed it under the pillow. And next day, the tooth vanished and there was some money under the pillow. This is just a tradition. And Prabhupada took that money and gave it to his mother for safekeeping. Later, when he had some fight with his mother, he said, I need the money now. Give me back my money. Braiding hair. Oh, Prabhupada had sisters. I need to drink some water. Just give me a second. Just give me a second. I'll mute for a second. So braiding hair, generally, it's when the mother braids hair, it's the daughters who help her to braid hair. So Prabhupada had 4 sisters. So when they would be trying to braid his mother's hair, he would want to do it. And somehow or another, he would be very insistent. And he would chase away his sisters and get it and do it himself, try to do it himself. Unwilling to go to school, that's interesting. Prabhupada is always unwilling to go to school. So first time that he was unwilling to go to school, Prabhupada himself explains it. First time that he was unwilling to go to school, his mother complained to his father that your son is unwilling to go to school. And so Gaur Mohan, being usually lenient, he said, okay, let him go tomorrow. And the next day when it came, Prabhupada said, Abhay Charan, he said, I'm sick, I cannot go. So second day also he skipped. So like this, he tried to make a habit of skipping. So much so that his mother had to engage a person called Damodar just to take Prabhupada to school and bring him back. So in the initial days when he would take Prabhupada to school, he would actually tie a rope around his waist and pull him by the rope. Of course, not hard. He would just drag him by the rope to school. And even after that, once he's in the class, he would come out of the. Then Damodar had to lift him physically with his hand and put him back in the class. So this was Prabhupada. But after some time, he got used to it and he began to attend school. This is the kindergarten school that he would go to. Now, hearing Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Bhagavatam, this is an important aspect of Prabhupada's life, that his maternal uncle, who lived in Toliganj, he would regularly organize sessions on reading Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada would often go and attend those sessions in Toliganj. Meanwhile, even where he was living in Harrison's Road, his grandmother had encouraged him to read the Mahabharata. And Prabhupada would daily read the Mahabharata. So, and Prabhupada says that because the kids would read Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Bhagavatam, in the night they would dream about it. So we hope that today we are reading about Prabhupada's life. So we hope that by reading about Prabhupada's life, in the night when we take rest tonight, we hope that we dream about Srila Prabhupada. Okay, flying kites. Now, this is something which we need to learn for our own children, that flying kites. Sometimes when Prabhupada would have difficulty, he and his sister, Bhavatarini, a younger sister was like Bhavatarini, Pisima, who was there even during Prabhupada's final days with him. She's famous in ISKCON as Pishima. So she was always his assistant. Even after he established the Krishna consciousness, she became the assistant. So there would be flying kites. And sometimes it's difficult to fly a kite because you need to be a little bit expert due to the wind, and flying conditions are not always favorable. So they would actually chant a prayer to Krishna. Krishna, please remove the obstacles. Now, this is something which is important for us to also learn, because children, Prabhupada wanted that in every step of their life, they should remember Krishna. So children should be taught like this, that if you have difficulty, please pray to Krishna. I mean, if you have happiness, please thank Krishna. If you have difficulty, please pray to Krishna. So like that, Prabhupada's life is an example for our own children, how we should raise them. This particular aspect about flying kites, how he and his sister would pray to Krishna. Krishna, please help us to fly the kite. That's something we need to teach our own children. When they get something nice, we should teach them to thank Krishna for it. And when they are having some difficulty, we should encourage them to pray to Krishna. Of course, kids cannot understand the philosophy of pure devotional service. So we cannot think, okay, we are not supposed to ask anything from the Lord, so let's teach the kid not to ask anything. That can come at a later stage in life. But before they can process all that, what is pure devotional service, they need to first of all learn to be dependent on the Lord in both happiness and distress. So it's very important to teach them to depend on the Lord in both happiness and distress. Eventually, when they grow up, they'll be able to understand the concepts of pure devotional service. But in their early childhood, they should be taught to depend on the Lord in every aspect of their life. Prabhupada's toys included those two guns which he bought. Then he had a winded car, and he had a cow which had a rubber attached to it. If you press the rubber, the cow would jump. Then he had a dog with a mechanism which would make the dog dance. Dr. Bose, the same Dr. Bose who gave him chicken broth, had gifted that once when Abhay had a wound in his leg. Dr. Bose had gifted him that toy. Since that dancing dog came up, I found it irresistible to just go a little bit out of it and just read one small purport, a small text from the Bhagavatam, to infuse a little bit of nice philosophy here. This is from the third canto, 31st chapter, 34th text of the Bhagavatam. It says, one should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. Okay, so basically, I mean, that's just an aside, as they say. I just wanted to bring it up because that is the nature of Maya. Maya makes us a dancing dog in its hands. And woman is a representative of Maya because she has that attractive potency. So this is Lord Kapila's teachings to his mother. Anyway, let's come back to Lord Jagannath. Next is Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra. Okay, now before coming to Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra, okay, let's go. Okay, no, I think I'll go ahead with it. Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra. Okay, now Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra. Prabhupada, although a child, had wanted to do that Rath Yatra in exactly the same manner as the adults were doing. Because on Mahatma Gandhi Road, Radha Govinda temple, they would organize a Lord Jagannath, Baladeva and Subhadra Rath Yatra with all the three carts. And what they would do is that they would, three separate carts, and they would take them on a procession along the road and bring them back. And like that, there would be 8 days of festivities. So Prabhupada wanted to replicate his Rath Yatra in the exact same format. So for which he wanted a small Rath. So his father and him, they went to the carpenter's shop to try to get that Rath, but it was very expensive and Gaur Mohan could not afford it. So they were disappointed and they were coming back. And when they were coming back, there was an old lady who came and asked Abhay Charan, why are you crying? Prabhupada was crying. Abhay Charan was crying. Said, oh, I want to do the Rath Yatra. I don't have a cart. The old lady said, I have a cart at home. You can come and have a look at it. So then Prabhupada's father very happily took Prabhupada to that house, Abhay Charan to that house of the old lady. And there was a cart which was very suitable. And immediately they got it. And then they renovated it. They put that 16 columns as they have in Lord Jagannath's cart. And Abhay Charan personally painted the whole cart. Personally painted the whole cart. And they organized a Rath Yatra for the children in the same Addison Road. Now, one interesting thing that happened was, usually when children are enthusiastic and they want to organize something, all the mothers become enthusiastic also. So all the different mothers also were very enthusiastic and they prepared various kinds of foodstuffs every day for Lord Jagannath. Like that 8-day festivities Prabhupada conducted while he was a small child. And he did exactly like Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra in Puri. Now, one interesting thing is that this is something which Prabhupada throughout his life he observed, including the very until his very last breath. Jagannath Rath Yatra has kept expanding across the world, and that is Prabhupada's one astonishing, unique achievement. Because during the time of the British, when the British came to India, they could not believe what they consider the primitive nature of Indians. They worship some big piece of wood. I mean, it looks like what do you call it? I mean, a bizarre looking form, no hands, no legs. What kind of primitive worship is this? And they would see, I mean, hundreds and thousands of people, hundred thousands, I mean, many hundred thousands of people in the Rath Yatra, and some of them would actually, it was considered a tradition that if you jump in front of the Ratha's cart and get crushed in front of the Ratha cart and get crushed by the wheels of the Rath, then you become liberated immediately. So people would jump. The British, when they saw this, they found this completely bewildering. What kind of festivity is this? You know, and the beauty of it is that they used to say that the sun never sets in the British Empire, which means that they're conquered across the whole world, you know, and if the sun is setting in one country, sun is rising in another British country, like that. If sun is setting in one British country, sun is rising in another British country. So that is why they would proudly say the sun never sets in the British Empire. Now, they were so proud of it. Sorry, just give me a second. So they would say the sun never sets in the British Empire. Now, if you look at what has happened, the British Empire has vanished today. But Lord Jagannath has prevailed. He has not only prevailed, but he's riding right through the main streets of London, through Trafalgar Square. This is the unique achievement of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He has established that Lord Jagannath means literally the Lord of the universe. So he rides now every year through the streets of London, whereas the British Empire has vanished, but Lord Jagannath has prevailed. When he was 6 years old, he asked his father that he wanted to worship deities. And his father offered him Radha Krishna deities to worship. So he, along with Bhavatarani, would follow the same process of worship that we follow the temples, and same process of worship that his father was following. So they say that children, Prabhupada used to say, children like to imitate. So imitation of a good thing is a good thing. So whatever the parents do, generally the children imitate. So because Prabhupada's father was a pure devotee and he would worship the deity very devotedly, Prabhupada also took to that worship. So it's important for parents, the Krishna conscious movement, to do the right thing so that children get inspired. During his 5th to 8th year, regarding education, during his 5th to 8th year, apart from, first he went to the kindergarten school, then after that, Prabhupada says that there was a Marwari school, and elsewhere he says that. And then from year 5 to year 8, he also got private tutoring at home for Bengali and Sanskrit. Then when he was 8 years old, even today, if you go to Mahatma Gandhi Road, you will see the Mutilal Seal Free School. So, things are wrong. Okay. So that it was the Motilal Seal Free School, and I mean today you find that's very close to Mahatma Gandhi Road. If you go there, you will be able to see that school, and it generally the children of the same Malik families were mostly the students who went there were children of the Malik families. It was a free school, and Prabhupada's education, primary education, or you could say middle school education, happened there. The tram arrives. This is an interesting thing which Prabhupada mentions, that on Mahatma Gandhi Road, because it's a pretty big road, that time the electricity had just come. British had just introduced electricity, and so they introduced the electric tram. Then Prabhupada noticed that on top of the tram there was a device, or what do you call it, a piece of metal which touches to the electrical cable on top, and it pushes the tram. So Prabhupada said, I imagined that I could keep a stick, or I wish that I could hold a stick, touch those wires, and I could physically move like the tram. Around the same time, he also encountered the gramophone, and he said that he thought that there is a ghost or some person inside the gramophone which is making the sound. Okay, cycling. So Prabhupada said when he was in school, they would play, and when they would play football, and he would like to be the goalie because he didn't like to run around. But although he didn't like to run around, he he loved to cycle. He would cycle all the way from northern Calcutta all the way towards central Calcutta, which is Dalhousie and Victoria Memorial, those areas, you know, Maidan. And finally, while coming back, sometimes you would come through the bank of the Ganges back home. Because through the Ganges also you can reach back Haddison Road. And those of you who are familiar with Calcutta may know, or those who have visited Calcutta may know. So Prabhupada is very fond of cycling. Initiation yogis. Now, some of you may remember, some of you may not remember, that Prabhupada actually initiated when he was 12 years old by a professional yogi. Prabhupada did not consider that as a very serious initiation. And so this yogi had said about his guru, that once his guru had asked him that, what do you want? And this yogi had said, I want fresh pomegranates from Afghanistan. And immediately, fresh pomegranates from Afghanistan appeared in the next room, and he could go and have those pomegranates. And Prabhupada is not very much impressed with all these mystic things. And once when his father and he were walking through Calcutta, they noticed that there was a yogi who was performing some trick of his hands and feet were tied, and then he was put in a sack, and then the sack was put into a box, and the box was locked, but still he managed to come out of the box. He had seen these kind of things, so he did not find these things to be very appealing. Hindu-Muslim riot. This is an important episode of how Krishna saved Srila Prabhupada. Just go to that. Oh, in Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra, I forgot to read this particular thing. So Prabhupada would sing a prayer, actually, you know. Prabhupada was deeply into that mood of the gopis. So we all know that Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra is an attempt to bring Lord Jagannath, bring Krishna back to Vrindavan. The gopis meet Krishna at Kurukshetra, and they're trying to bring him back to Vrindavan. So that is the meaning of Rath Yatra. So Prabhupada would, along with Pishima, would sing when he was a small boy observing Jagannath Rath Yatra. He would sing a song, Ki Kara Rai Kamalini. What are you doing, Srimati Radharani? Please come out and see. They're stealing your dearmost treasure, Krishna, the black gem. If the young girl only knew, the young boy Krishna, treasure of her heart, is now forsaking her. This is about Krishna leaving Vrindavan. I mean, this is a bhajan they would sing during that Rath Yatra, 8 days of festivities. Okay, now Hindu-Muslim riot. Prabhupada would often say that this whole, the whole problem between this Muslims and Hindus were actually created by the British. He recollects, I mean, that he says it was very common that the Hindus and the Muslims during the time of the British, until they started this whole trying to break the unity of the Hindu and Muslims, Prabhupada mentioned that it was a very what do you call it? Very close friendship that Hindus and Muslims had. He speaks about his own father. He says that one of his father's close friends, business friends, was a Muslim. And this Muslim gentleman would actually invite Prabhupada and family to their house. And when this Muslim gentleman would invite Prabhupada and family to their house, he would also ensure that there was a Brahmin cook and all the things necessary, because he knew that Prabhupada's family would not eat from a family with a cook's meat. In fact, Prabhupada says that my father, he never used to eat in a hotel or anyone else's house. And he said, even when they would go out, Prabhupada said his father, and these are references for this. I mean, whatever I'm saying is not just what I've heard, but actually Prabhupada himself has said these things. So he says that whenever my father would go out, he never had food in a hotel or in someone else's house. He would always have food in some temple, he says. They would go to the temple, they would offer a donation to the temple, and they would have the prasadam, they would have the bhoga offered to the deity, which then transformed into prasadam. And that prasadam they would have of the deities. So Prabhupada is very particular about, I mean, his father is very particular about it. So when this Muslim gentleman would invite him home, this is what they would, what do you call it? They would do. They would arrange a Brahmana cook and all that, and so that Prabhupada's father and all the family members don't have any discomfort. Similarly, Prabhupada says that when they would come, also they would take care to ensure that they don't. There is no, I mean, no Muslim. No animals and other things which are forbidden things are allowed in the kitchen. So like that. So they had a very good rapport. So then he says that there's a good rapport between the Hindus and Muslims were broken by the British. So this is one of those episodes when one of the first episodes of the Hindu-Muslim disunity. All around our neighborhood on Harrison Road were Mohammedans. The Malik house and our house were respectable. Otherwise, it was surrounded by what is called Kasbah and Basti. So the riot was there and I had gone to play. I did not know that the riot had taken place in Market Square. I was coming home and one of my class friends said, "Don't go to your house. That side is rioting now." We lived in the Mohammedan quarter and the fighting between the two parties was going on. But I thought maybe it was something like two gundas, hoodlums fighting. I had seen one gunda once stabbing another gunda, and I had seen pickpockets. They were our neighbormen. So I thought it was like that. This is going on. But when I came to the crossing of Harrison Road and Holiday Street, I saw one shop being plundered. I was only a child, a boy. I thought, what is this happening? In the meantime, my family, my father and mother, were at home frightened, thinking, the child has not come. They became so disturbed. They came out of the home expecting, where from the child will come? So what could I do? When I saw the writing, I began to run towards the house. And one Mohammedan, he wanted to kill me. He took his knife and actually ran after me. But I passed somehow or the other. I was saved. So I came running before our gate. My parents got back their life. So without speaking anything, I went to the bedroom and it was in the winter. So without saying anything, I laid down, wrapped myself with a quilt. Then later, I was rising from bed, questioning, is it ended? The riot has ended? When Prabhupada was 15, he contracted a disease called Beriberi. both him and his mother. Now, Beriberi, if you look at Google, you'll notice that is a deficiency of vitamin B1, some thiamine deficiency, due to which movement becomes difficult and few other symptoms. They say it is due to malnutrition, but that's just a theory. Prabhupada is always saying that they were always fed very well. So there could be other causes of beriberi. And Prabhupada and his mother recovered by using some calcium chloride or something, some chemical like that. That Prabhupada was 15 at that time. Then his mother passed away when he was 16. But this is a very important turning point in Prabhupada's life, because his mother was a great shelter that he had. And we've studied, we've read how his mother was always very attentive to his needs and was always trying to protect him. So, so his mother's passing away was very important event in his life. From that point onwards, he had to take responsibility in the family also. Previously, it was his father and mother. By now, Prabhupada had grown up. He had become 16 years old, and he had to take responsibilities of different things in the family. And his mother was 46 when she passed away. When Prabhupada was born, she was 30. And when she passed away, Prabhupada was, she was 46 and Prabhupada was 16. So when he was obviously shaken by his mother's passing away, and so his father consoled him because he's a pure devotee. So his father consoled him by saying that the soul never dies, and he gave him knowledge about the Bhagavad Gita's teachings. So that's how he overcame that episode in his life. So we have finished chapter 1 for today. And before I begin chapter 2, because chapter 1 so far everything looks very nicely comprehensible, because we know that Prabhupada is a pure devotee. So everything appears very nice and everything appears, synchronized with respect to our mind. However, the next chapter is going to deal with his involvement with Gandhi's movement and college and all these things. So which may apparently bewilder our minds because of our conditioning. But we should remember that Prabhupada is a pure devotee. So therefore, I will bring up certain things which Prabhupada himself spoke, and so that we set the context for the next class right at the beginning of the class. Before we started, we know what how to view those pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. So I think then we've got 7 more minutes for questions. I think we'll stop a little early today if there are any questions or comments. You should unmute them, I think. There are questions in the chat, right?
Yeah.
Harshita Sharma. Okay, before that, there's a question. How is Vidwan Gauranga Prabhu's health now? He's getting better. Sorry, I did not understand how to utilize the pandemic for making people chant. You're not supposed to say that it'll make the pandemic go away. How to utilize this opportunity? How to utilize this opportunity? We should tell people that you should get in touch with God. And if you get in touch with God, all problems will be solved, big, small, everything, including the pandemic. So if they may decide to do it for the pandemic, that's okay. But we can't pitch it for the pandemic. That's all that I'm saying. We should pitch it the way it should be pitched, like the way Prabhupada pitched the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra when there was when there's a drought in Hyderabad, he said that, I mean, if people are trained to be Krishna conscious, then these kind of miseries will not occur. So if people become Krishna conscious, pandemic will not even occur in the first place. So we tell people that you become Krishna conscious. We don't focus only on the pandemic. Your pandemic and all kinds of problems will go away. You will become fully happy. So kam kartum away. So pandemic is only one part of it which may go away. So we don't tell people that chant Hare Krishna, pandemic will go away. Chant Hare Krishna, pandemic will go away. We are not making them focus on the pandemic. That is the point. We are trying to focus them on love Krishna. Then all these things will go away. Love Krishna. We're not trying to make them focus on the pandemic. That is the difference. I hope it's clear. I don't know if it's clear enough. Can you just reply if it's clear enough, or you need some clarification? Okay, she says yes. Okay, Sashi Rupa Lalita Mataji. I missed the second meaning of Abhay Charan Day, which Srila Prabhupada mentioned. Can you please repeat? Okay, I'll read the exact thing which Prabhupada said. Okay, just give me a second. I'll read the exact thing which. Of this child. This is Prabhupada's own words. Abhaya means there is no fear. Is that, do you hear that? I mean, it said the internet connection is unstable. Did you all hear it? Any confirmation from anyone? Did you hear that? Okay, I'll read it again.
Can you read it again? Yeah.
Abhaya means there is no fear of death of this child. Okay. I never knew this is why we touch things to our forehead. Okay. Yeah, because it's Krishna's property. We're not supposed to kick Krishna's property. Okay. Prabhu, just for new devotees, should we treat them like children, tell them to pray to Krishna when in difficulty, or tell them to pray with, if you so desire, and tell them that as devotees, we should not demand, because many times when new devotees pray and problem is not solved, they lose faith. No, we preach in the exact same manner that Prabhupada preached. Prabhupada did not say that. So we also don't say that. We say, why if you so desire now, that just tell people that you chant Hare Krishna. All your problems will be solved, and whatever Krishna wants to give you, he will give you. That's it. Leave it to Krishna. And Prabhupada never preached in any other way. So we should also not preach in any other manner. I mean, it may work for a while, but then, as you're saying, this problem will come up. If it does not work, then they lose their faith also. So we don't promise that you chant and this problem will go away. Because what if Krishna does not make the problem go away? So we make people chant Hare Krishna for the sake, we teach them proper philosophy. Like these are all insignificant things for God. Within a moment, he can solve all these problems. So let's focus on the main thing. Other things will happen, automatically happen. Even what to speak of other things, liberation is standing with folded hands in front of a devotee. Liberation is standing like a maid servant, like menial servant. What can I do for you? That is the position of a devotee. What to speak of all these ordinary things like a pandemic, just very trivial things. Okay. There are raised hands now. Shall we go to the raised hands?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, just wanted to ask you out of curiosity, the Harrison Road property also has been acquired by ISKCON or not?
I don't know actually. I don't know. Oldadanga, yes, but Harrison Road, I'm not sure. I need to find out. I'll let you know in the next class.
Okay. And one more thing, Prabhuji, at the end of every chapter, like in the next class, is it possible you can just give us some bullet points which are very useful for devotees to apply? or to follow?
You mean to say from today's class?
Yeah.
Whatever other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, whatever I mentioned in my class, I could put in.
Yeah, I mean, not everything, at least the important points which we really need to apply as devotees so that we can progress and improve and follow Prabhupada as closely as possible.
Yeah, but in this particular instance, it's only about how to raise children. Yes.
Yeah,
but
that also
as we
devotees
progress, yeah.
need to follow.
Yeah. As we progress, we'll then directly from that how it's applicable directly to us. Yes.
But
Fine.
even this will be very useful to newly married couples, because when they are grooming their children, it is some of great use to them.
Exactly. Definitely. Yeah. Now, I mean to say that one-to-one correspondence with the Prabhupada's life and our life, that will begin at a later stage. But right now, yes, I agree with you that the teaching is important. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
There is one more hand which is raised, right?
Yeah. And then unraised.
Prabhuji, can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
For his, regarding his childhood, is there anything else from anybody else's biography on Prabhupada? Any other Prabhupada disciple has mentioned, which is not in this particular volume?
No, because Prabhupada's, you don't have much sources of Prabhupada's childhood other than Prabhupada himself, right? So there's not much information apart from this. And whatever else is there, a little bit was there, I mentioned, but don't have. There are a few things which I will take it up later on, where I'll relate it, but it's not. Yeah, that's all. I mean, there are a few more things, but then I'll take it up later on. But basically, this is what it is.
There was something like, I remember vaguely that his teacher punished him or something like that. Was there anything like that?
The teacher pulling him by the ear, right?
Something like that, punished or pulled the ear. I can't remember.
Yeah. That's there in the Lilamrita itself. That's there in the Lilamrita itself. It just comes a little bit in that school section.
Oh, okay.
But it's not mentioned as of any. What's it? Once when the teacher pulled his ear, Abhay threw a kerosene lantern to the floor, accidentally starting a fire.
Okay.
That's all. So it's just as an incident. Signage Govinda Prabhu. You can ask a question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, just a little bit of guidance for devotees with younger children. Ours are all grown up and married and on, so we brought them up in a way we felt appropriate. But we've noticed a lot of devotees sometimes with the younger children misunderstand or perhaps misinterpret or even perhaps misuse some of the teachings. Like, for instance, today we mentioned that Prabhupada's father would allow him to have anything he wanted and not reprimand him. We've seen devotees who allow that to go to another extent, where the kids are running riot, they're being rude, they're being disruptive, they're, and they use this so-called license that Prabhupada says with their parents, and saying, look, they don't be reprimanded, they should never be told off, and they should be allowed to. I find that a misuse of etiquette, really, because I think Vaishnavism also means respect, showing children that they should be respectful, they should be, better behaved. And I think that I'm just looking for you to give some wider guidance here, because it's very difficult to tell devotees that I don't think that's quite what is meant in this situation where you just allow them to run riot. So just an observation.
This is an excellent point. As I mentioned earlier in my previous classes, that we need to look at the whole of Prabhupada's teachings before we act on something. So Prabhupada very clearly mentions that between 5 and 15 years old, when the children are between 5 and 15, we should be very strict with them. This is an instruction that is coming from Prabhupada directly. He quotes Chanakya Pandit. So his idea was that, like for example, he did not want children to be forced to do japa. Very clearly, he did not want that. Of course, he wanted them to rise early. That's fair. But he said, let them attend Aarti. Aarti is anyway singing and dancing and whatever. Then he allowed them to play, all these things. But there are some things which he did not want to be forced, which is by definition, like for example, like the japa. You sit and chant. Small children cannot do that easily. So unless they want to do it, you can't be forced on them, which specifically says don't force them to chant japa. But whereas other things like getting up in the morning is only a question of practice. In the beginning, they may not like it, But whereas once they get used to it, it becomes kind of a routine for them. It's not like some big deal. Nobody regrets. I've not seen a child who regrets after growing up. Oh, I was asked to wake up early. I mean, how they were asked to wake up may be a question. Like if you throw cold water on them and all these that may be an issue. But the fact that I've not seen anyone complaining that we were asked to rise early in the morning. What they usually complain about is we were asked to force to chant japa. We were asked to force. I mean, that is what they really dislike. But so Prabhupada had this thing that nobody, ever complains about singing and dancing at Mangalarti. Nobody does that actually, except when they're not fed properly. Then what happens is if they're not given enough sufficient rest, then they're sleep deprived, hungry. Then the whole experience of Krishna consciousness becomes problematic. So not problematic, they're not able to relish that experience. So we should be strict in terms of the behavior of the children. Yes, it's very important. Prabhupada mentioned the story about how when a child was being hanged to death, but a grown-up man, of course, was being hanged to death. He was asked, Prabhupada tells the story, do you have any final desire? He said, yes, I have one final desire. I want to see my mother. And then they bring his mother. And when he sees his mother, he bites off her ears, and then everybody's shocked. Then he tells her that when I was young, if you had disciplined me, I would not be in the situation today. Because you did not discipline me, therefore I'm biting off your ear. Just out of, So then Prabhupada quotes this story. So this is the point, that when they are behaving in ways that are detrimental to their self and to the society at large, definitely they have to be disciplined. There's no doubt in that. Absolutely no doubt in that. Prabhupada is very clear about all these things. He was only trying to ensure that the discipline does not come out of frustration or neglect. Sometimes to deal with children, one of the most important things while dealing with children is you have to give them time, which means that you have to be attentive to what they're talking. It's not that we are doing some work, they're coming and talking, and we're not bothered what they're talking. We have to be very attentive to them. What are they actually trying to say? What do they want? So once they see that they're getting attention from parents and what they're trying to say or address or get is at least something is being attended to. Whether yes or no is a different thing, but at least they need to get that attention first of all. Then gradually, so apart from saying no to a few things, we are also saying yes to a lot of things. It's not that we are not saying yes to a lot of things. We're also saying, so there is a balance between yes and no. But whatever is detrimental, we're not meant to say yes to it. Of course, having a toy gun is not detrimental. So we can't find even in Prabhupada's pastime something which Prabhupada's father did, which is detrimental to even from a moral standpoint. No, he did not do it. Whereas, some things where there could be some flexibility, where we can flex within bounds, as they say. But that's permissible. I don't know if I answer this comprehensively, but I just at least try to give an outline. Sailesh Govinda Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Yes, that was fine. Yeah, I mean, I think, I know this is maybe not the forum, but that there needs to be a slightly better education process, particularly for Grihasthas, in terms of understanding the full spectrum of Prabhupada's teachings, as opposed to taking selective parts and perhaps not really understanding the depth of what the philosophy and the teachings are all about. I find that it's quite common where we end up taking selectively what we want and not really understanding the full spectrum. So I think if whenever things such as these came up, and I think I mentioned this to you earlier in a couple of sessions ago, that I think when these points come up, we should try and broaden the spectrum so we cover the broader issues at hand, because all these are sensitive points and people's interpretations can sometimes be misleading. So thank you again, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, the basic thumb rule is that, I mean, we generally hear this thing, our movement is all about love. But the point is, Prabhupada repeatedly said, disciple means discipline. Similarly, when he spoke about Gurukuls, the whole idea of a Gurukul is discipline. It is discipline-based love. It is not just love independent of discipline. It is principled love, as we call it. It's not just love as some sentiment. It's principled love. That is real love. It is not just some wishy-washy feeling love. We can't have our own artificial, superficial concepts of what are love and then try to impose it. I try to just go with it. Rather, we should try to understand, if you love a person, you really need to do what is genuinely good for them. So if we really love our children, we should first of all know what is good for them and then do genuinely what is good for them, because of our lack of, because we are lazy to understand what is love. Then we just go with something superficial. No, first of all, that takes a lot of time and effort, especially raising children. And if we do real life with adults, if we are genuinely loving towards adults, then it's easier for us to be loving towards children. But if we are superficial in our dealings with the devotees, then we also become superficial in dealings with children. It's all about good words and good, whatever. It's all about rhetoric, but it's not about actual, it's not actually applying things in your life. For example, sometimes I remember, you may have encountered this also. Sometimes you meet some devotees whom you have not met for ages. And then you ask them, Prabhu, how are you? Say, all good by your mercy. What does it mean? I mean, he may genuinely saying it sometimes, thinking that because I'm advancing by the mercy of devotees. But sometimes it may just be a blind, just blank rhetoric, by your mercy, because they're supposed to say that. What does it even mean? Do you even think of me? Of course, I'm not saying that. I don't mean to say that, oh, you should be thinking of me and by my mercy is advancing. But the point is, do they really mean what they're talking? So similarly, when we talk, we should really mean what we talk, not simply say something for the sake of love and superficiality and things like that, or trying to be politically correct. But rather, we should try to be genuine. That is what this Krishna consciousness is all about. It's a little bit of elaboration of what is about. Okay, so if there are no more questions, we'll end for today. Thank you all very much for attending. So we'll resume next Sunday. Vidwan Gauranga Prabhu is getting better. I think that in all probability, he would be able to take the Thursday class this week. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo. There's a question.